Welcome back everyone to Spiritman Studios, and with the upcoming release of Blade Runner 2049, a sequel to a movie that came out 30 years ago, and with the recent release of the Blade Runner Final Cut on 4K edition, we're going to be taking a look at the original Blade Runner and see if it's actually any good. So let's begin with the specs. Blade Runner is directed by Ridley Scott of Alien fame and stars Harrison Ford as he plays Decker, a former Blade Runner who is tasked with eliminating rogue simulants, or robots that look and act like humans, but aren't exactly human in the ways of ethical issues, as he's trying to take down a rogue syndicate of replicants. And as the mystery unfolds about these replicants, he slowly but surely tries to figure out some other mysteries that may or may not be pertinent to his own existence. The main thing about Blade Runner is that this movie is hard science fiction. What I mean by hard science fiction is that its reality is so facetedly based inside of its own scientific field that it feels like it could be within real life. The scientific concepts of artificial intelligence and the philosophical concepts of what is humanity, what is the essence of humanity, and how can we measure humanity is all within the movie. There's even lots of biblical theming and a lot of ancient Egyptian iconography, and there's tons of different philosophical debates you could have about this film. But this is not where I have, expertise on, as I've only seen this movie maybe 10 times already now, trying to figure out every little facet for my own review. And I'm not here to discuss any of the philosophical, religious, or scientific backgrounds for this movie. I'm just here to judge the movie as a movie. So basically what this movie is, in sense of tone and genre, is that it's a sci-fi noir film that really plays up the noir aspects with certain lighting effects, certain camera moves, and certain editing techniques and writing styles. It's certainly one of those films that you could sit down and try to envelop yourself into the mystery. But it is also, as I said before, it's also a science fiction film, meaning that most of the story is also related to science fiction concepts, as I mentioned before, artificial intelligence, sentient life, pretty much a lot of different aspects. The writing style of this movie is very fascinating, and I do find myself very much engrossed into the movie. Now, I do also have to emphasize that this is a movie adaptation of a book, but I also said loosely. There's a lot of various things that are creatively leveled in this movie. In fact, they only take a certain couple things from the book and just adapt the rest into their own vision, which is what Ridley Scott likes to do sometimes with his own movie adaptations of various books. The acting in this movie is very, very well done, especially by the actor who plays the lead, The acting in this movie is very well put, especially by the lead rogue replicant, and he gives one of the best cinematic speeches of all time, which I won't spoil here, but it's definitely one of his best. It's definitely one of the best monologues in cinema history, one of the most recognizable monologues in cinema history. The visual style of this movie is very, very futuristic, with a lot of its neo-dystopian styles, and a lot of it's more often than not, just visual spectacle. Ridley Scott, despite what you may think about him sometimes as a director, his visual style is definitely one that is always, a constant throughout his films. Even in his most mediocre films, such as Alien Covenant and Prometheus, you can still see a sense of visual spectacle, or even just a sense of visualization inside of pretty much most of his movies, which is a big upside to having Ridley Scott direct Blade Runner, because he has a very distinct visual cue. Now, whether or not that would translate into Denis Villeneuve, who is actually doing the sequel for this movie, I have yet to even find out. But from the trailers alone, it would seem that it's taking some cues from the original movie, which I do respect. There's really nothing else to this movie. I can't really say anything too negative about this movie, but I do also want to jump back to the visualization here. The visualization in this movie, without the visuals of this movie in particular, you wouldn't have movies such as Ghost in the Shell from the 90s, or even The Matrix. a lot of the different categories of philosophy, religion, and even the visual styles of Blade Runner are very translatable into different mediums, and Ghost in the Shell was one of the biggest names to take influence from Ridley Scott's own masterpiece. All in all, it's a pretty big package, but I also have to say that one of the biggest negatives for this movie, and it's very minor, but it's not like the biggest thing in the world, is that per usual with a lot of Ridley Scott movies, there are tons and tons of different cuts for this movie. Technically, according to most people, there's 7 different cuts alone of Blade Runner. 7. Pretty much what happened with these cuts is that there was a bit of a studio interference with some of the cuts, and Ridley Scott had been trying to fight for the deal to make his own cut, and you may be wondering to yourself, well, Nick, since there's 7 cuts, which one did you judge? Well, I judged the final cut. I mean, it's the final cut. It's the one that Ridley Scott himself approves, and I also approve of it as well. If you want to check out the movie, it's now available on 4K. You could try to find it on Blu-ray, but I highly suggest either finding it maybe on VHS, but also try to find the this cut. It comes with a Blu-ray as well if you don't have a 4K. All in all, Blade Runner presents a very deep and philosophical discussion about artificial intelligence, religions, philosophies, while also being a self-contained crime noir story within a science fiction setting that has been already predestined from its very inception to being a very cult classic in the hard science fiction realm. Harrison Ford gives a pretty damn good performance, as well as most of the other cast members. The visual style is pretty breathtaking and really memorable in a lot of points, and especially the musical score is some of the most best synth music I've ever heard. If you think Stranger Things' soundtrack is really neat, the music in this kind of beats that out 10-1. In the end, I'm going to give the original Blade Runner a solid A+. Thank you guys so much for watching my Blade Runner review. I'm hugely excited to see the sequel. I've only watched the trailer once. I actually did a trailer reaction video to it, a trailer breakdown, trailer thoughts, about what I think of the trailer and what might transpire in the movie, but I'm hugely excited to see what happens. As for all the fan theories and whatnot, they might be concluded in this one movie, but who knows. So, until next time, I'll see you guys behind the camera. Peace.